Welcome to the newly launched podcast series Behind the Pouch from the people who bring you the Bigger Life website and online forum. We'll bring you a 30-minute fortnightly dose of honest, unscripted chat with a range of different ostomates from around the world telling their stories in their words. I'm Louise, and I consider myself really lucky to be a stomach care nurse here in Ireland.
And I'm Shona. I work with a dedicated team of people just outside Belfast. Together, we bring you just some of the ostomy products that you or somebody you know relies on. So every day, Louise and I get the chance to meet with and speak to people with stoma who may have or have had ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease, bowel cancer, or those who just woke up from surgery one day with a surgical scar and a stoma on their stomach. I also happen to be an ostomate myself.
And if there's one thing ostomates have in common, it's a unique story.
So we want to give ostomates a platform to tell their story. We're here to listen, to learn, to cry and to laugh with a series of people who are defined as ostomates, but who haven't let being an ostomate define who they are.
So hopefully this podcast is something for everyone, for ostomates and their families, their friends, and people they turn to for support. I'm a qualified stoma nurse, so I'm always really interested in the clinical part of our guest's ostomy journey, but we're not here to get too technical. There's a tribe of dedicated stoma nurses all around the world, and we'll always encourage you to reach out to them for your help.
And of course, there's always the community at abiggerlife.com, which is open 24/7 with advice, tips, and shared experiences. As official podcast hosts, it's our solemn promise to bring entertainment to your ears along the way. So please join us for some small talk on a bigger life as we go behind the pouch.
Our first guest I'm excited to announce is an award-winning bus driver from South Wales, a man who has seemingly embraced life since becoming an ostomate 8 years ago, and he has shared many of his own personal experiences in a bid to help others. When he's not driving buses, I believe he can be found spending quality time with his family, fundraising for charity, and posing in front of the camera as an occasional ostomy swimwear model, one that we may delve into that later, I'm sure, or giving Paul Hollywood a run for his money with a spot of home baking. His self-proclaimed dad dancing has also graced social media as he finds new ways to keep active and his army of social media followers entertained in life under lockdown. We welcome Keith Thomas to the pod. Welcome,
Good
Keith.
morning. Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning, Keith. We are absolutely delighted to have you here today chatting with us. And I cannot wait to hear more about this dad dancing and finding out about the motivations behind that. But
Wow, how do I follow that?
Well, exactly. But we'll delve into that in a little while. But if we
Sure.
could just start off, Keith, with just taking you back to the beginning. And we would love to hear a little bit more about what life was like before your stoma surgery.
Okay. Back in 1999, I started as a coach driver, passed my test as a coach driver, and I spent many hours sitting in buses waiting for passengers to come back. And it's a bus driver is a snack in life, and you don't realize everything creeping up on you. And I didn't realize how often I was actually going to the toilet. And I had a couple of years there where they were absolutely horrendous. Some days you couldn't go to work, some days you could go to work, but you just think it's a bit of bad belly or whatever. And it was only in 2008 that they actually did diagnose me with ulcerative colitis. And that was because I turned up in a hospital, severely hydrated. I didn't even realize how hydrated I was. And they kept me in for 6 days.
Oh, wow.
This was horrendous time, I have to be honest. At the same time, my eldest son had a little boy and sadly didn't make it. Oh. So with me being stuck in hospital, I couldn't get out for 6 days, so I couldn't see them. Yeah. It was quite tragic at the time. Thankfully, my amazing wife, made sure my children were okay. But when you're trying to deal with one thing and then something else comes along, it can be heartbreaking,
Yeah, it's a lot to deal with.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. And how long did you suffer like that for, Keith?
I must have suffered like that for about 8 or 9 years.
Wow.
And I say, I didn't actually know what it was, because you just go to the doctors. And to be honest, back then, Crohn's and colitis wasn't a thing. You know, I'd certainly never heard of Crohn's and colitis.
Okay. So you feel there's a lot more awareness, you know, in recent times and in, I suppose, your kind of latter years of Crohn's and colitis. You feel that, you know, kind of people are seeking that little bit more help nowadays, whether it is for, you know, kind of online support and whatnot. People may be getting hopefully help earlier.
Crohn's and colitis is on everybody's lips these days. You know, the way everything has come on in the last 8 years due to social media, without a doubt. You know, that when I was diagnosed, there was very little information about. I can honestly say that.
Yeah.
Compared to today, it's everywhere today. And it's just thanks to people raising awareness, you know.
Like yourself, Keith. So yeah, exactly.
Like
and this is how it is. This is sharing that, you know, you never know how you can, you know, help the next, as they say. Because times of dehydration, times of hospitalization, times of a quick fix, we'll say, easily done, and to recover and get back into the swing of real life again. But the fact that, you know, you got help and you got a diagnosis really, you know, is amazing to think, you know, here you are today. So you transitioned then at that really difficult time. And, you know, tell us a little bit more then about, I suppose, your journey to becoming an ostomate.
Yeah, well, basically what happened in 2008, I was diagnosed. So I spent 4 years on, I think it was about 20 tablets a day, you know, immunosuppressants, steroids. I had the moon face. It was horrendous 4 years. Again, I was very lucky. I had fantastic employers in a factory. And they even sorted out a toilet for me. And if I didn't come into work, they understood. I had an horrendous work record. I was hardly ever there. But I say they kept the faith, they kept my job. And then in 2012, 4 years later, after being on the tablets for 4 years, I suddenly had very severe cramp in my legs one day. And that passed, and then the same time the next night this happened again. So I didn't feel too good. Rang the hospital. They saw me. They rushed me into hospital. They realized something was wrong, and it turns out my bowel was about to perforate. So they spent the next 10 days pumping me full of steroids and x-raying me every day just to stop my bowel perforating, and thankfully they did. It was this time I met a surgeon. And he said, we've had a look, he said, and your bowel is no good. We cannot save your bowel. So he said, you'll have to have surgery. Now, I'd never heard of a stoma. No idea what a stoma was back in 2012. But he explained it to me. It was fantastic the way he explained it. And he gave me a choice. He said, you could either have a stoma for life and have everything else taken away, or we could build an internal pouch for you. He said, go away, do a little bit of research the next few days, he said, because we will be operating in the next few days. Well, at this point, I was very lucky. I got to speak to two people, one who had a pouch, and he told me about his lifestyle, a youngish man. And a lot of his lifestyle, I'm not sure if it's the same now, but a lot of his lifestyle at the time was drinking shakes all day. And I'm a lover of my food. And he basically didn't do a lot else. And then I talked to an older guy who had had a colostomy for 40 years. And this guy was amazing. He was fit. He was healthy. He went to the pub and had a drink. He ate everything. He worked on building sites. And I thought, that's me. One operation, one recovery.
I'll have a bit of
had
that,
the bigger life. It sounds great. So.
Definitely. And Keith, could I just clarify with you? I think you'd mentioned there that at this stage you were working in a factory.
Yes,
in a factory office. So you'd had to leave your job as a bus driver.
No, basically what happened, I was driving coaches, and I decided I wanted to become a plumber.
Right.
So I know it gets complicated. In my 40s, I went back to college for 2 nights a week for 4 years, and I qualified as a plumber. I did a little bit of work in plumbing, and that's when the real illness started to hit me, and I realized, well, you can't. This is going to sound funny, but you can't take somebody's toilet out if you need it in the next 2 minutes.
Oh, that's so funny. Oh God.
So,
My-
yeah.
okay.
So I gave up the coach driving. I went into a factory to work, and then when they realized I was having problems with the plumbing, they asked if I would come back to the factory in a more senior role. So luckily, this is what I did. I went back to the factory, and I was in the factory for the 4 years that after my diagnosis, you know. So it must have been meant to be, because I'd have been unemployed otherwise. There's no way I could have carried on with the plumbing. The plumbing was my dream, but
Yeah. Little did you think you'd be, so focused on the plumbing internally and your, other systems.
You
I
tell
do,
me.
I do link the stomach care world a lot to the plumbing, and kind of say it's how our body is plumbed right now, and that is literally it. It's funny how life works, but it sounds like it's been kind to you in every sense of the word. Well done.
Somebody was watching over me, I think.
Yeah, and still
Everything
is.
for a
Amazing.
reason, Keith, everything for a reason,
Of course it
definitely.
is.
But I'm glad that you were, that you were so well looked after in your work, because that definitely makes a difference to people, doesn't it?
Well,
it really does.
Well, that's what happened. I went back into the factory, and I was still working there when I had my operation. I had a 10-hour operation to make my ileostomy.
Yeah.
And then after that, they said there was a 6-week recovery period. I was back in work 6 weeks to the day after my operation. They gave me light duties, obviously sitting, playing with a computer. And after about a year, I decided a factory wasn't for me anymore. I need to be with people all the time. So I applied for bus driving, which is very different to coach driving. It's service bus driving. And I applied for a job with First Cymru buses. Didn't know if I'd get it. And they gave me the job straight away. And the hardest part was going back to tell the people in the factory that I was leaving. But in fairness, my boss turned around and she said, go and be the best bus driver you can be. And I've done that for her.
You have proved that. Well done.
That is lovely. And Keith, initially, do you remember your days following surgery? Just those initial few days. Do you remember those well? Do you remember the feelings, etc., that you were going through?
Yeah, my dad, sadly, we lost him last October. He was 89, but my dad actually turned up outside the operating theatre, and he sat there for the 10 hours I was having the operation.
Oh, wow.
When I woke up, he gave me a kiss. He said, I know you're okay now, son. And he left, which was truly amazing,
That's a lovely story.
Yeah, they took me up to the ward, and as I was coming round from my haze, I could see the television, and I'm a big football man. I was more concerned about watching the international football on the telly. Who's got the control? Who's got the control? I need it.
Was it Swansea playing perchance?
No, I think it was England and Wales, and I'm quite sure I'm sure Wales won.
Probably.
Yeah, but I was more concerned about that. So the next couple of days I was in hospital, I basically took the ward over, as I do.
Very good. Very
so
good.
It didn't impact.
Support? Sorry, Louise. Did you have good support from your stomach care nurse?
Yes, I did. Yeah, that was fantastic. She was more. She was really wanted to get me to learn how to change the pouch myself. I was quite anxious to get out of there and go home, and start my new life. And she said, obviously, you can't go home until you can change the pouch yourself. And she showed me once, and that was it. I just I'll do this now, and I've done it ever since. I'm very hands-on, let's get on with it sort of thing. But yeah, they were great. They were actually great.
Very good. And do you remember feeling any particular difficulties or any particular worries at that initial stage just after surgery?
Not at all. No. I know everybody's ostomy journey isn't or will not be the same.
Yeah.
Mine is totally positive. I totally embraced it from the start. This is my new life. It's just a different way of using a toilet. Yeah. It's a bag. Do you know what I mean? I
That's a
can look after it,
fabulous way
and
of looking at it.
that's the way I look at it. It's just another way of going to the toilet.
And do you think that attitude, obviously you've had that positive attitude. You decided, you spoke to two people, one had a stoma, one had the J pouch, and you decided, no, you knew then and there, this is the way I want to go. I want to have the stoma. That positive attitude, do you think is that what has helped you get
Without a
through it
doubt.
all?
Without a doubt. And I still use my social media for positivity. If I have a bad day, everybody has a bad day, but if I have a bad day, I don't put it on social media. People don't want to hear about how ill I am or how I'm suffering. They want to hear good things, and they can aim for the good things. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
This is me.
absolutely.
Oh my God, you sound like such an inspiration as you are, and well done. And everybody's so lucky to have you out there, to be able to reach out to the likes of yourself and all those other people that, are there to answer questions for people,
It's just me and the way I was brought up. I'm one of 6 children. I'm an identical twin, actually.
Wow.
But yeah, but 2 of my family have. My younger sister has very, very severe Crohn's. She has refused surgery, which it's everybody's choice. Do you know what I mean? It's not everybody's the same. And my eldest son has just been diagnosed with Crohn's as well back last year. So at least they've got me as support as well, and they see how well I'm doing, and it does give them good days,
Yeah,
For sure.
influence for them, definitely.
Yeah.
So, what about, we've talked about life before surgery and it wasn't good. We've talked about the initial after surgery. What about now? How is life now for you?
Well, when I was in hospital recovering, now I don't read a lot, and I'd never written down a lot. And I said to my wife, could you fetch in pen and paper? I said, because I've just got all this stuff in my head I need to write down. Totally bizarre. So I just started writing about my, daily things that were going on, how I was feeling, all this and that. And I think it was about a year later, Pelican Healthcare in Cardiff, and they were looking for people to share their inspirational stories. So I suddenly realized what this was all about. I'd written all this stuff down. I gave it to my wife, who, by the way, is a retired teacher. She don't let anything get past her, right? What comes out of my head and is written down on a piece of paper is not the final draft, believe me.
Wow.
So
Keeps you
she
right.
edited it up. Oh, she's fantastic. She edited it, and then we sent it off to Pelican. They loved it, and they put it on the social media, and then boom, that was the start of it. I shared it. I was called a Twitter fiend at one point. I was sharing it with so many people, but I shared it on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. People loved it. Then I was lucky. I had other people who had similar stories, but they were too frightened to put them out there, and they started contacting me, and someone did actually send me a story. I read it, and I said, let's get that to Pelican, and we are really dear good friends since then. It just all started from there, and life
Keith,
is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, you are amazing. And even just that start and you putting your pen to paper and how it all began, it just shows that you are proud. You're proud of your story. And your bigger life means, your contentedness. And I mean, that just says so much about you, and I have to say, just well done. And it's so lovely to hear. It's absolutely just fantastic. Yeah, you're remarkable.
Now, a little birdie has told us that
Yes.
you have been nominated for an award. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Yes. Well, at the end I was very lucky at the end of November last year. So at the beginning, I was awarded the Welsh Bus Driver of the Year in a fantastic event in Cardiff. And then 18 days later, I was in the UK Bus Awards in London, and I took second place. I took the silver. But to actually get shortlisted from thousands of people was incredible. To actually come second, you know what I mean?
Oh,
So those awards in the bus industry, it was fantastic. I ended up on telly and everything. And now somebody has nominated me for a National Diversity Award 2020. It's in conjunction with ITV. And that is in the positive role model in the Disability Award.
amazing.
Now, people have to vote for me. And to date, this is hard to believe, but to date, I've had 300 votes.
Amazing. How do we vote for you, Keith? Or where do we go to do this?
It's on my Twitter feed. It's on my Facebook feed. It's easy to find. It is actually the pinned tweet on my Twitter feed, which I'm sure you'll read out later.
We will indeed.
It's not so much about the 300 votes. It didn't matter if it was 20 votes. It's actually, I get to read what people say about me, but I don't know who said it, if you know what I mean. So it's still anonymous. But honestly, what people have said about me, if ever I have a bad day, I just pick up my phone and look at that and read what people actually said about me. It is so humbling. It is so humbling. I know I do this because it's just me. But when you read what other people say about you, it's mind-blowing. It really is. So hopefully they've extended the deadline for the voting, which is till the 8th of next month. There are I think to date there's about 40,000 people nominated in the different categories, and each category gets 8 people shortlisted. So fingers crossed I'll be one of the 8, just to mingle amongst these fantastic people in September, you know.
Keith, well done. So proud. That is
Totally.
just fabulous. You get my vote anyway. And
Thank
you know, it brings to mind, I could talk to you all day. I could actually listen to you all day. You know, I could actually just literally sit back, because I'm sure you have 1,001 stories to tell. And I just find each and every story, each and every optimist's journey just fabulous. Like, it really, you know, how their life changes, please God, more so for the better. But this is just it. I just feel like hopefully, and I'm sure you will, reach out and impact so many of our listeners out there.
I'm quite sure there's a documentary or somewhere. I have mentioned this in the past.
There you are. Documentary making.
Without a doubt.
That's it. But I suppose we better wrap up somewhat. As I say, Keith, it's been such a pleasure. You will be getting and hearing from us again. You get my vote. And yeah, I just want to say thank you and best of luck down the lines. And we will surely be in touch.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Shona, I really enjoyed that chat with Keith. I just felt he was just fantastic, and hopefully the listeners will enjoy him just as much as I did. The great kind of things that I pulled out from our chat were, you know, the first thing, you know, about the awareness of the likes of Crohn's and colitis. You know, he identified that back in the early, you know, noughties, that the little awareness that was there, you know, the lack of support that was there, and how it's changed over the last number of years. There's been, you know, there is so much support, and I think that then in turn impacts, you know, support awareness. It impacts his really valid and most important point that he said about his employer. So, you know, about having a really supported workforce, no matter, you know, what kind of struggles that you might be going through. There's no substitute for an amazing employer, and you could tell he was very much so supported. Obviously the impact of raising this awareness, you know, kind of touches on people in the workforce. So that was just really, really lovely to hear. So people being supported through, you know, whether it is a struggle pre-diagnosis or throughout, you know, your time with your stoma or your ostomy journey. And also what struck me was just his positivity, you know, throughout in such a lovely, positive way, despite, you know, kind of the struggles, the personal tragedies that he had kind of early on. It's testament to his character. You know, he's a fantastic role model, and he's embracing his life right now. And I just think, like, he's just kind of really thrown it out there that it's only a very small part of a bigger life. So I have to say thanks again, Keith. Really enjoyed it. I'm sure we'll have many more chats in the future.
I couldn't agree more. A very, very inspirational individual, very, very positive, and just really a delight to speak to, I find. So, totally agree with everything you've just said, Louise. And again, I'd just like to thank Keith for sharing his story with us today. And for our listeners, you can find out more about him by following him on Twitter at KeithTom2014 or checking out his Facebook page at Help Be the Change. If you like what you've heard from our newly launched Behind the Pouch podcast, then you'll be pleased to hear there are more episodes on the way as we welcome more guests from across the world to share their stories. We would encourage you to please hit the subscribe button to be kept up to date with new episodes as they become available. And if it's not too much trouble, please include a rating or a review so that we know what you think. Remember that you can go to abiggerlife.com, which is open 24/7 and has lots of advice, tips, and shared experiences. It's free to register. And finally, if you would like to contact us directly, you can do so via email hello@abiggerlife.com for any questions, comments, or even expressions of interest in being part of our podcast in the future. Thank you for listening, and please join us again soon.